What's going on, guys? It's Red Bull Tanker with Airsoft Commando, and we are here to kind of give a mid-game review of HBGs, the Korean War. We are at turn 7, as you guys saw from the previous turn 6, so just a few notes to kind of at least go over what we think so far. Overall, we think that the game is a good concept. The concept of the game is fun. It's something new, something that's not World War II, something that's at least a little bit further into the future, though. I think when this game was built, stores like HBG weren't around yet to really carry on the idea of like jet fighters and B-29s and all the small technological leaps that happened between 1945 and the start of the Korean War. But let's see here. I mean, at least for me, this will be my portion of the video. The few things I would say positively, overall, good game. I like the concept. It's pretty easy to play. It's easy to play. And how do I want to say it? It's not a complicated game to play. It's really not. Once you interpret, once you kind of get an interpretation of the rules, then it kind of gets into the plane a little bit better. My critiques or other things I like. I'll keep going with the other things I like. I do like the whole supply. I do like the supply rule. The idea that you need supplies in order to attack, and also you need supplies to conduct non-combat moves. Like, I do like that idea, and especially on a, I guess what you would call a smaller scale game, it makes a lot of sense to like have something like that involved. Having a mechanic like that involved in the game. Another aspect I definitely find interesting that I also do kind of like is artillery, which I believe I had explained earlier. But so in this game, artillery can shoot into the next territory. So like this U.S. artillery here in Sanggu could technically do an artillery barrage against and you can target. You can pick what unit you'd want to shoot at in the next territory, and you'd get that on a 2 or less. And as long as it's not an artillery or a tank, it can't shoot back at you at the same result. And then, say I were to attack into this territory with the infantry and the artillery supporting, while the artillery would boost the infantry, the artillery would actually hit on a 1. And I actually do kind of like that concept that artillery, at least on a scale of this game, artillery would not really be going forward with the front lines. Like, it would be sitting back, pouring support fire into it. Let me see here. I think that's about it for what I liked. A couple things that I definitely would like to see tweaked. Definitely again, like I keep saying, the rule book. The rule book is very vague on certain topics. Another thing that I would fix is at least the starting setup with supplies. Because, again, it seems like since no one starts with supplies, and as you saw in the videos, it took basically North Korea 4 turns out of 12 just to even start their invasion of the South. And, I mean, I still say, Airsoft Commando definitely got lucky on turn 5 when he took Seoul. What was it? I think when he took it, he had this mech and 3 tanks remaining. So, I'd still say it was a close thing. And if he had failed on turn 5, it probably would have taken him at least up to turn 8, maybe even turn 9 out of 12 to again to at least have this strike group in range of actually taking Seoul again. So that is definitely one thing I think would need to get fixed is the supplies. Another thing I definitely would like to see, one thing that I also think definitely would need to be fixed is the how the UN and the US get their reinforcements to Korea. Like, the supply tracker is an interesting idea. I do like it. The backdrop to it, and you guys saw this in my turn 6 video, is that it took half the game before the first UN and first US purchases, or at least the first ground purchases, actually reached Korea. So they didn't get to the game until halfway through, which doesn't really play well when you're kind of trying to create a semi-realistic version of the Korean War, which, I mean, by we're on turn 7 now. That's January 1952. Technically, I mean, the game should have already been like North Korea pretty much already being south and then already being pushed back, and China already being in the game. But, with how this game has gone, North Korea just now took Seoul for the first time on turn 6. Another thing, too, definitely is China. I guess for me, like, the whole thing with China is, like, what does China do during the game when it's not at war? Like, does it just sit idle? Is it allowed to spend all 35 of its IPC every turn and just build up a massive army in the north here until maybe they get pulled into the war? Because, I mean, like I said, we're on turn 7, and I really don't see China getting pulled into the war this game, which to me feels like China's just a useless faction at that point. Like, why even have them if the game is really not gonna the game's not really gonna be able to bring them in. But other than that, I mean, those are just my few criticisms, at least for what needs to be, what could be fixed. But again, overall, I definitely like it. So now I will turn the video over to Airsoft Commando. I will hand him the pointer stick and the microphone.
Hey guys, Airsoft Commando here. I now have Red Bull's pointer stick of knowledge. One thing that he didn't point out that we hadn't even really talked about, but I really like, is the IPC rule. I love that only North and South Korea benefit from taking territory as far as gaining IPC, because the other two factions aren't even really in the Korean Peninsula as far as like having a stake or industry or anything like that. It makes a lot of sense. What was the other thing I had? I just had a whole list, and of course right. Movement. We were talking about this, especially for vehicles. While I understand why they listed it as far as mountains, and that's why they want everything to move at 1, a lot of Korea, like, you have all this green territory here. As far as I understand, Red Bull was telling me about it too. It's pretty flat, and if you look up the history, after the Americans landed in Incheon, things moved pretty quickly. The North Koreans went from all the way to the bottom right in Pusan, basically pushed back into Pyongyang, months or so? China, as you said, even with every other turn, I have a massive force that I can't do anything with, and I don't foresee myself ever having to do anything with. Supplies. Whoops. I now know nothing because I lost the pointer of knowledge. Supplies. Now, this is one thing I don't know if you've noticed throughout the game. This massive force is 2 turns worth of reinforcements being purchased, because I didn't feel like spending the IPC every turn to get movements from my reinforcements every turn. So I've been doing every other turn to make it kind of worth the money spend. But what that means is, and I don't know if you noticed, this territory right here hasn't moved since they left the 38th parallel, because I don't have the money, resources, or supply line to supply both. So while I understand the supply situation, as Red Bull has said, it definitely slows down the game. One thing I know we were talking about was having it so that it's only used for attacks. You stockpile supplies for attacking, and then when it's non-combat, you can move within your own territory without requiring it, because ideally you would have your own supply logistics chain set up inside territory you already control. And I believe that is all the things I have to say. I'm trying not to step over things Red Bull has already pointed out. And I think that's all on my end. passing it back over.
All right. So, I mean, again, like I said, we're both enjoying the game. It just needs a few tweaks, and I actually pointed this out to Airsoft Commando just today before we started. I noticed when reading the units, some of the unit specialities for this game, like it says here that submarines get a first strike unless a destroyer is present. The only thing with that is that in this game, North Korea and China don't get a navy. They can't purchase naval units. So it just seems weird that rule was given to submarines, unless, and this was something that I had thought about with Airsoft Commando, that maybe at one point the developers had thought about a random event or something, or some kind of condition that would have also brought the Russians into the game, which then would have brought in the Soviet Pacific Fleet, which then you could actually get some naval battles in this game. But perhaps that idea was scrapped. But it's always a fun thing to maybe think about visiting in a fun sort of way to make the game a little interesting, that you could actually bring the Russians into this game. And like I said, especially with mine and Airsoft Commando's 1951 game that we've been working on for years, and with that last playthrough I did on the Operation Unthinkable map, I definitely think I could combine that map with this map and give a more in-depth feel to Harry Turtledove's Hot War trilogy, as far as having the game only take place here in Korea and then in Europe, and not so much globally like how we've been playing with like our custom global map or on the global 1940 map. But I think that's it for now. So that is sort of our first-hand review for Historical Board Gaming's The Korean War. And with that, we will see you guys next time for Turn 7. So until then, guys, as always, take care.